In Washington State, Democrats are pushing a gun control effort. Here to explain is Carleen Johnson, the Center Square's reporter there. She's doing a great job. Thanks for coming on, Carleen.
If I can keep up only with all of the gun-related pieces of legislation that have been offered up. What is it? We're in like week 11, I think, of the long session, which is scheduled to end April 27th. But Casey, a couple of the more contentious, controversial gun-related bills are very much alive and well. In fact, this week, receiving hearings in the opposite chamber, like they've passed the House or Senate and now they've gone to the other side, for those public hearings. And probably the most contentious one of this session, Casey, is House Bill 1163. This is the permit to purchase firearms bill. And majority Democrats have thus far pushed it through without a single Republican vote in support. This was floated last year and it didn't get very far. And of course, there's lots of opposition from Second Amendment supporters, and others who just basically say this is an infringement on constitutional rights for law abiding gun owners, right? So supporters argue it's going to make our states safer. But there are a whole lot of bells and whistles and hoops to jump through to get this new permit well before you'd ever be able to get, a firearm.
So you have to get the permit before you buy the gun.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big, to non-gun owners, they wouldn't understand that, but that's a big distinction.
And in Washington State, as of January 2024, we had legislation that had passed the year before that took effect that made it a mandatory 10-day waiting period. So say like today, I'm thinking, I want to go buy a new handgun. I'm going to go hunting this weekend, or I want this for self-protection, right? I go to my local gun store and I go in there and say, I want to try out a couple of guns at the range. I decide which one I want to purchase. There and then I can apply. They'll do a background check. I got to wait at least 10 days before I could then take possession of that firearm. That's what's current law. So they're already doing the background check. You've already got the 10-day waiting period. It already goes to the national system to check that, make sure I'm not a convicted felon and have my firearms rights taken away. But this will require a lot more, I suppose, impairment. Opponents of the bill say it's an impairment. I'm going to have to go to State Patrol, pay a fee, which is not spelled out how big of a fee that is going to be, to get my permit to purchase a gun. State Patrol at that point, assuming they've got the personnel to keep up with this demand, is going to have 30 days to, do the background check there on me. And also, then I am required to pay another fee then to take a firearms safety training course, one that's approved by the state. And that includes live fire training. So for folks that maybe have taken a firearm safety training course before, maybe, a couple hours at the range or whatever, a lot of times it's just how to handle the gun, right? Here's how the safety's on and off. Don't ever point it, it's something you don't intend to shoot, right? All those kind of obvious things. This is live fire training. So you're going to go to State Patrol, get the permit, pay the fee for that, pay for the safety training course. Maybe that's done in 30 days. Now I go to my local gun store and go, okay, here, I've got my permit. Can I buy a gun?
Sorry, it was sold already.
Sorry, we're sold.
Somebody bought it.
That was a popular one. Your mom got here last week. Yeah. Good point too. Actually, the last firearm I purchased, I had to wait because there was a backlog on orders for it. Funny you should suggest that, but, you're going to then still have the additional 10 days at that point, Casey, and they're going to do a second background check on you at that point. So you're minimum 40 days from the time you go to State Patrol, deciding you want to get your permit, to getting that permit, to then going into the gun store to attempt to purchase. 40-day minimum period of time.
That's pretty incredible. What's interesting to me is you're in Washington, but I'm in the other Washington, D.C., and this is just not an issue people are talking about right now. They're talking about, education. They're talking about health care. They're talking about, research and nonprofit funding. They're talking about the war in Ukraine. So is this really just a really important issue to people in Washington? Or is it that Democrats finally kind of got the numbers they needed to push through an ideological win? Is there like a groundswell of support just calling for this?
No, there really isn't. And in fact, for as bright blue as Washington is, at least on the western half of the state, even central and eastern Washington, far less populous, but all those people over there are, many of them gun owners. We've got 1.5 million gun owners in Washington state. A lot of people with guns. Many of those people have multiple firearms, right? And then you've got 700,000 people in Washington state that have a CPL, their concealed pistol license. So as blue as this state is, people here love their guns on both sides of the aisle, right? It's not really a political issue, but in very progressive, majority Democrat run Olympia, they're all about trying to, go after the whole gun safety issue. And yeah, we've got issues with firearms out there. Their whole approach is to make it harder for law abiding gun owners, to go about their business. And instead of tackling the public safety approach, maybe from both sides, right? Like go after the bad guys with guns who shouldn't get their firearms rights restored, or keep these guys behind bars, if they committed an offense with a firearm. It's just a whole different mindset, but you're exactly right. It is not really what people are talking about. It is, however, what the majority in Olympia is pushing. And yes, they've got wide majorities in both the Senate and the House. So there's really nothing stopping them. I mean, Republicans, I think they offered 27 amendments on the House floor when permit to purchase was passed. 27 amendments. It went for like 4.5 hours of debate, and amendment after amendment after amendment was struck down by the majority. So the other one is 5098. And
this is gun-free zones.
Yes. So we've already got these gun-free zones, right? I mean, you can't get anywhere near a school, any, state-owned buildings, whatever. These are already gun-free zones. And I'm sure in your other Washington, you've got the signs all over the place too, right? The idea is somebody's going to go, oh, well, I might have my CPL. So I've got my weapon on me. Wait, I'm walking now into this, state government building. Here's my reminder. Put your gun back in your car, dummy. Run it. We've got those everywhere. This would be a massive expansion on that, Casey. Anywhere that children are likely to be present leaves a lot of wiggle room. And there was an incident at a fair in Grant County that inspired the prime sponsor on this. Somebody brought a gun in. There was an incident. I don't recall if that was like an accidental discharge or something, but as it turns out, the guy who had the gun at the county fair where it was legal, he wasn't allowed to have a gun. He did not have his firearms rights restored because of convictions in his past. So therein lies the gist of the argument from every single, opposition argument to this, all the Republicans and everybody in public testimony that's come in to speak against this. So wait a minute. As well-intentioned as all this is, to have the sign at my local park here in my community that says, I can't bring a gun because there might be kids here playing. Maybe well-intentioned, but is the bad guy with the gun who might be going to the park with bad intentions or a drug dealer or whatever, is he going to abide by the sign? And because the sign's there, go, what? Yeah. You know what? Not going to commit my crime here today. I'm going to go back home and put my gun away. Not likely to have much of an impact on public safety. So, but both of these bills, which, as I mentioned, are the most contentious ones offered this session, are moving full steam ahead at this point, highly likely to face some constitutional challenges almost immediately, whether it's a Bellevue-based Second Amendment Foundation, Washington right to keep and bear arms. I mean, there's several groups that are going, whether this is in violation of the Bruin, decision or just an infringement on, Washington State's constitutional protection for gun owners. I think both of these are really wading into that area.
Wow. what a standard where children are likely to be present. So basically every restaurant, every grocery store. What's funny is under that standard, basically the only place you could bring a gun is a place where there's like a lot of alcohol.
Oh,
or maybe
casinos,
right?
Right. Casino. So you can only bring a gun to places where people are likely to be intoxicated, to get intoxicated.
Right. That's
how we increase safety in this country. Well, Carleen, very interesting. Clearly know your stuff. Thanks for talking to me about it. I hope we can have another conversation soon. Thanks so much.
You bet. Glad to help.